Chapters! Oh my gosh, we are almost to the end of Harry Potter. We're on chapter 16. Harry and Ron have figured out what is inside the Chamber of Secrets. They've gone to tell Professor Lockhart and then learned Professor Lockhart was planning to leave because he is scared and doesn't know how to do anything because he's not a good teacher. Not like Miss Lang, of course. Guys, we are at a part now where Harry and Ron have taken Lockhart's wand and thrown it out the window, and they have him at wand point, and they're saying, you are going to go down there. You are going to get Ginny Weasley back. So let's see what's going to happen. They marched Lockhart off to his office and down the nearest stairs, along the dark corridor where the messages shone on the wall, the door of Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. They sent Lockhart in first. Harry was pleased to see that he was shaking. Moaning Myrtle was sitting on the tank of the end of a toilet.
Oh, it's you,
she said when she saw Harry.
What do you want this time?
To ask how you died, said Harry. Myrtle's whole aspect changed at once. She looked as though she had never been asked such a flattering question.
Oh, it was dreadful,
she said with relish.
It happened right in here. I died in this very stall. I remember it so well. I'd hit him because Olive Hornby was teasing me about my glasses.
Oh, Miss Lang's got glasses.
The door was locked and I was crying, and then I heard somebody come in. They said something funny, a different language, I think it must have been. Anyway, what really got me was that it was a boy speaking, so I unlocked the door to tell him to go and use his own toilet, and then...
Myrtle swelled importantly, her face shining.
I died.
How? Said Harry. No idea, said Myrtle in a hushed tone.
I just remember seeing a pair of great big yellow eyes. My whole body sort of seized up, and then I was floating away.
She looked dreamily at Harry.
And then I came back again. I was determined to haunt Olive Hornby, you see. Oh, she was so sorry she'd ever laughed at my glasses.
What exactly did you see? Where exactly did you see the eyes? Said Harry.
Somewhere there,
said Myrtle, pointing vaguely toward the sink in front of the toilet. Harry and Ron hurried over to it. Lockhart was standing well back, a look of utter terror in his face. It looked like an ordinary sink, but they examined every inch of it inside and out, including the pipes below, and then Harry saw it. Scratched on the side of one of the copper taps was a tiny snake. That taps never work, said Myrtle brightly as he tried to turn it. Harry, said Ron, say something in Parseltongue. But Harry thought hard. The only times he had ever managed to speak Parseltongue was when he faced with a real snake. He stared hard at the tiny engraving, trying to imagine it was real. Open up, he said. He looked at Ron, who shook his head. English, he said back. Harry looked back at the snake, willing himself to believe it was alive. If he moved his head, the candlelight made it look as though it were moving. Open up, he said. Except that the words weren't what he heard. A strange hissing had escaped him, and at once the tap glowed with a brilliant white light and began to spin. Next second, the sink began to move. The sink, in fact, sank right out of sight, leaving a large pipe exposed, as a pipe wide enough for a man to slide into. Harry heard Ron gasp and look up. He had made up his mind what he was going to do. I'm going down there, he said. He couldn't not go. Not now he had found the entrance to the chamber. Not if it was even the slightest, slimmest, faintest, wildest chance that Ginny might be alive. Me too, said Ron. There was a pause. Well, you hardly seem to need me, said Lockhart, with the shadow of an old smile. I'll just... Harry put his hand on the doorknob, but Ron and Harry both pointed their wands at him. You can go first, Ron snarled. White-faced and wandless, Lockhart approached the opening. Boys, he said, his voice feeble. Boys, what good will it do? Harry jabbed him in the back with his wand, and Lockhart slid his legs into the pipe. I really don't think, he started to say, but Ron gave him a push, and he slid out of sight. Harry followed quickly. He lowered himself into the pipe and then let go. It was like a rushing down an endless, slimy, dark slide. He could see more pipes branching off in all directions, but none as large as theirs, which twisted and turned, sloping steeply downward, and he knew that he was falling deeper below the school than ever, even the dungeons. Behind him he could hear Ron thudding slightly at the curves, and then, just as he had begun to worry about what would happen when he hit the ground, the pipe leveled out and he shot out at the end with a wet thud, landing on a dark, damp floor, stone tunnel large enough to stand in. Lockhart was getting to his feet a little ways away, covered in slime and white as a ghost. Harry stood aside as Ron came whizzing out of the pipe too. We must be miles under the school, said Harry, his voice echoing in the black tunnel. Under the lake, probably, said Ron, squinting around at the dark, slimy walls. All three of them turned to stare into the darkness ahead. Lumos, Harry muttered to his wand, and it lit again. Come on, he said to Ron and Lockhart, and off they went, their footsteps slapping loudly on the wet floor. The tunnel was so dark that they could only see a little distance ahead. The shadows on the wet walls looked monstrous in the wand light. "Remember," Harry said quietly, as they walked cautiously forward. "Any sign of movement, close your eyes right away." But the tunnel was quiet as the grave, and the first unexpected sound they heard was a loud crunch as Ron stepped on what turned out to be a rat's skull. Harry lowered his wand to the floor as they saw it was littered with small animal bones. Trying very hard not to imagine what Ginny might look like if they found her, Harry led the way forward around a dark bend in the tunnel. "Harry, there's something up there," said Ron hoarsely, grabbing Harry's shoulder. They froze, watching. Harry could see the outline of something huge and curved lying right across the tunnel. It wasn't moving. "Maybe it's asleep," he breathed, glancing back at the other two. Lockhart's hands were pressed over his eyes. Harry turned back to look at the thing, his heart beating so fast it hurt. Very slowly, his eyes as narrow as he could make them, and still see, Harry edged forward, his wand held high. The light slid over a gigantic snake's skin, of a vivid, poisonous green, lying curled and empty across the tunnel floor. The creature that had shed it must have been at least 20 feet long. "Blimey," said Ron weakly. There was a sudden movement behind them, and Gilderoy Lockhart's knees had given way. "Get up," said Ron sharply, pointing his wand at Lockhart. Lockhart got to his feet. Then he dived at Ron, knocking him to the ground. Harry jumped forward, but it was too late. Lockhart was straightening up, pointing Ron's wand in his hand and a gleaming smile on his face. "The adventure ends here, boys," he said. "I shall take a bit of the skin back up to the school, tell them I was too late to save the girl, and that you two tragically lost your minds at the sight of her mangled body. Say goodbye to your memories." He raised Ron's spell-taped wand high over his head and yelled, "Obliviate." The wand exploded with the force of a small bomb. Harry flung his arms over his head and ran, skipping over coils of snakeskin, out of the way of great chunks of tunnel ceiling that were thundering to the floor. Next moment, he was standing alone, gazing at a solid wall of broken rock. "Ron," he said, "are you okay? Ron!" "I'm here," cried Ron's muffled voice from behind the rockfall. "I'm okay. This Git's not, though. He got blasted by the wand." There was a dull thud and a loud "ow." It sounded as though Ron had just kicked Lockhart in the shins. "What now?" Ron's voice said, sounding desperate. "We can't get through. It'll take ages." Harry looked up at the tunnel ceiling. Huge cracks had appeared in it. He had never tried to break anything as large as these rocks by magic, and now didn't seem a good moment to try. What if the whole tunnel caved in? There was another loud thud and another "ow" from behind the rocks. They were wasting time. Ginny had already been in the Chamber of Secrets for hours, and Harry knew there was only one thing to do. "Wait there," he called to Ron. "Wait with Lockhart. I'll go on. If I'm not back in an hour—" There was a very pregnant pause. "I'll try and shift some of this rock," said Ron, who seemed to be trying to keep his voice steady, "so you can get back through. And Harry?" "See you in a bit," said Harry, trying to inject some confidence into his shaking voice. And he set off along past the giant snake skin. Soon the distant noise of Ron straining to shift the rocks was gone. The tunnel turned and turned again. Every nerve in Harry's body was tingling unpleasantly. He wanted the tunnel to end, yet dreaded what he would find when he did. And then at last, as he crept around yet another bend, he saw a solid wall ahead of him with two giant intertwined serpents were carved, their eyes set with great glinting emeralds. Harry approached, his throat very dry. There was no need to pretend these stone snakes were real. Their eyes looked strangely alive. He could guess what he had to do, and he cleared his throat, and the emerald eyes seemed to flicker. "Open," said Harry in a low, faint hiss. The serpents parted as the wall cracked open, and the halves slid smoothly out of sight, and Harry, shaking from head to toe, walked inside. Woo, guys, that was the end of Chapter 16. Chapter 17 is called The Heir of Slytherin. We have a picture there. I'm going to read a little bit of this chapter, and then we're going to stop, because we have this chapter and one more, and we are done with the book, okay? So I'm going to read a little bit more of this one, and like I said, the clips for this last part of the book are awesome, so make sure you're watching those on YouTube. Okay. He was standing at the end of a very long, dimly lit chamber. Towering stone pillars intertwined with more carved serpents rose to support a ceiling lost in darkness, casting long black shadows through the odd greenish gloom that filled the place. His heart beating very fast, Harry stood listening to the chill silence. Could the basilisk be lurking in a shadowy corner behind a pillar? And where was Ginny? He pulled out his wand, moved forward between the serpent columns. Every careful footstep echoed loudly off the shadow walls. He kept his eyes narrowed, ready to clamp them shut at the smallest sign of movement. The hollow eye sockets of the stone snake seemed to be following him. More than once, with a jolt of the stomach, he thought he saw one stir. Then he drew level with the last pair of pillars. A statue high as the chamber itself loomed into view, standing against the back wall. Harry had to crane his neck to look into the giant face above. It was an ancient and monkeyish, with a long, thin beard that fell almost to the bottom of the wizard's sweeping stone robes, where two enormous gray feet stood on the smooth chamber floor. And between the feet, face down, lay a small black-robed figure with flaming red hair. "Ginny!" Harry muttered, sprinting to her and dropping to her knees. "Ginny, don't be dead! Please don't be dead!" He flung his wand aside, grabbed Ginny's shoulders, and turned her over. Her face was white as marble and as cold, yet her eyes were closed, so she wasn't petrified. But then she must be— "Ginny, please wake up," Harry muttered, desperately, shaking her. Jenny's head lolled hopelessly from side to side. "She won't wake," said a soft voice. Harry jumped and spun around on his knees. A tall black-haired boy was leaning against the nearest pillar, watching. He was strangely blurred around the edges, as though Harry was looking at him through a misted window, but there was no mistaking him. Tom Riddle?" Riddle nodded, not taking his eyes off Harry's face. "What do you mean she won't wake?" said Harry desperately. She's not. "She's still alive," said Riddle, "but only just." Harry stared at him. Tom Riddle had been at Hogwarts 50 years ago, yet he stood, a weird misty light shining above him, not a day older than 16. "Are you a ghost?" Harry asked uncertainly. "A memory," said Riddle quietly, "preserved in a diary for 50 years. He pointed toward the floor near the statue's gigantic toes. Lying open, there was a little black diary Harry had found in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. For a second, Harry wondered how it had got there, but there were more pressing matters to deal with. "You've got to help me, Tom," Harry said, raising Ginny's head again. "We've got to get her out of here. There's a basilisk. I don't know where it is, but it could be along any moment. Please help me." Riddle didn't move. Harry, sweating, managed to hoist Ginny half up off the floor and began to pick up his wand again. But his wand had gone. "Did you see—" He looked up. Riddle was still watching him, twirling Harry's wand between his long fingers. "Thanks," said Harry, stretching out his hand for her. A smile curled at the corners of Riddle's mouth, and he continued to stare at Harry, twirling the wand. "Listen," said Harry urgently, his knees sagging with Ginny's dead weight. "We've got to go if the basilisk comes." "It won't come until it's called," said Riddle calmly. Harry lowered Ginny back onto the floor, unable to hold her up any longer. "What do you mean?" he said. "Look, give me my wand. I might need it." Riddle's smile broadened. "You won't be needing it," he said. Harry stared at him. "What do you mean I won't be?" "I've waited a long time for this, Harry Potter," said Riddle, "for the chance to see you, to speak to you." "Look," said Harry, losing patience, "I don't think you get it. We're in the Chamber of Secrets. We can talk later." "We're going to talk now," said Riddle, still smiling broadly, and he pocketed Harry's wand. Harry stared at him. There was something very funny going on here. "How did Ginny get like this?" he asked slowly. "Well, that's an interesting question," said Riddle pleasantly, "and quite a long story. I suppose the real reason Ginny Weasley's like this is because she opened her heart and spilled all her secrets to an invisible stranger." "What are you talking about?" said Harry. "The diary," said Riddle. "My diary. Little Ginny's been writing in it for months and months, telling me all her pitiful worries and woes. How her brothers tease her, how she had to come to school with second-hand robes and books, how—" Riddle's eyes glinted— "how she didn't think famous good great Harry Potter would ever like her." All the time he spoke, Riddle's eyes never left Harry's face. There was an almost hungry look in them. "It's very boring having to listen to the silly troubles of a little 11-year-old girl," he went on. "But I was patient. I wrote back. I was sympathetic. I was kind. Ginny simply loved me. No one's ever understood me like you, Tom. I'm so glad I've got this diary to confide in. It's like having a friend I can carry around in my pocket." Riddle laughed. "Ha, ha, ha!" A high, cold laugh that didn't suit him. It made the hair stand up on Harry's neck. "If I say it myself, Harry, I've always been able to charm the people I needed. So Ginny poured out her soul to me, and her soul happened to be exactly what I wanted. I grew stronger and stronger on a diet of her deepest fears and her darkest secrets. I grew powerful, far more powerful than little Miss Weasley, powerful enough to start feeding Miss Weasley a few of my secrets, to start pouring a little of my soul back into her. "What do you mean?" said Harry, whose mouth had gone very dry. "Haven't you guessed it yet, Harry Potter?" said Riddle softly. Ginny Weasley opened the Chamber of Secrets. She strangled the school roosters and daubed threatening messages on the wall. She sent the Serpent of Slytherin on 4 mudbloods and the Squib's cat. "No," whispered Harry whispered. "Yes," said Riddle calmly. "Of course she didn't know what she was doing at first. It was very amusing. I wish you could have seen how her new diary entries were far more interesting. They became, 'Dear Tom,'" he recited, watching Harry's horrified face. "I think I'm losing my memory. There are rooster feathers all over my robes, and I don't know how they got there. Dear Tom, I can't remember what I did on the night of Halloween, but a cat was attacked, and I've got paint all down my front. Dear Tom, Percy keeps telling me I'm pale and not myself. I think he suspects me. There was another attack today, and I don't know where I was. Tom, what is going on? What am I going to do? I think I'm going mad. I'm the one attacking everyone. Tom!" Harry's fists were clenched, the nails digging deep into his palms. "It took a very long time for stupid little Ginny to stop trusting her diary," said Riddle. "But she finally became suspicious and tried to dispose of it. And that's where you come in, Harry. You found it, and I couldn't have been more delighted. Of all the people who could have picked it up, it was you, the very person I was most anxious to meet." "And why did you want to meet me?" said Harry. Anger was coursing through him, and it was an effort to keep his voice steady. "Well, you see, Ginny told me all about you, Harry," said Riddle. "Your whole fascinating history." His eyes roved above the lightning scar on Harry's forehead, and their expression grew hungrier. "I know I must find out more about you, talk to you, meet you if I could, so I decided to show you my famous capture of that great oaf Hagrid to gain your trust." "Hagrid's my friend," said Harry, his voice now shaking. "And you framed him, didn't you? I thought you made a mistake, but—" Riddle laughed. "Ha ha ha!" His high laugh again. "It was my word against Hagrid's, Harry. Well, you can imagine how it looked on old Amanda Dippet. On the other hand, Tom Riddle, poor but brilliant, parentless but so brave, school prefect, model student. On the other hand, big blundering Hagrid in trouble every other week trying to raise werewolf cubs under his bed, sneaking off to the Forbidden Forest to wrestle trolls. But I admit, even I was surprised with how well the plan worked out. I thought someone must realize that Hagrid couldn't possibly be the heir of Slytherin. It had taken me 5 whole years to find out everything I could about the Chamber of Secrets and discover the secret entrance, as though Hagrid had the brains or the power." Okay, guys, I'm stopping there. That was a long read, but oh my gosh, we are getting to some intense stuff. So Tom Riddle, who was the diary, the person who was writing Harry back in the diary, is now a real person. We need to figure out who Tom Riddle is. Guys, I hope you watch this clip. It is a good one. I miss you. I love you. Have a good day.